Curatorial Knits podcast. I am coming from you from a very breezy and overcast May day here in Oakland, California. This is a knitting podcast where I follow a pretty traditional format of talking about my projects and what I'm finished, what I'm working on, and hopefully what I'm up to next. If this is your first time joining us, welcome, welcome. And if you're coming back, welcome back. Maybe grab a cup of coffee, grab your knitting, little tea, and let's get into it. So I am wearing this kind of jolly green giant of a finished object. This is the Marseille sweater by PetitKnit, and it is very large. I was really happy with the top portion, and then somehow, some way, it just kept growing and growing and growing. It is a really fairly straightforward drop shoulder construction. I was really happy with the color choices. It's really bright and spring-like. And while when I first finished it, I was, especially the body, I mean, I was genuinely shocked by how big it had grown. As I was working on it, I was like, yeah, this is definitely big. I made a size medium, and I probably would have made a small. This is by, did I mention PetitKnit? I also had some yarn issues with this piece. I did run out of the main color, which was a small run of something called Hellomello handspun, which I got in Rhinebeck, New York at the Woolen Folk Yarn Festival last fall. Again, perfect color. I had one skein with very consistent DK-ish weight, maybe a lighter DK-ish weight. It was a perfect match for or not match color-wise, but perfect fit gauge-wise with the Sandnes Garn Tin Silk Mohair, which is a little bit of a thicker mohair because it has a bit of wool in it. Unfortunately, one of the skeins kind of shifted midway through to like a really thick yarn. In addition to it being more thickly spun, it also felt like it had quite a bit of like nubbins in it. And so I did use some of that, and you can see it in the midsection here, I think. Yeah, right here you can see how that kind of shift happens. And it's less of a color issue for me than it is a texture. So you can see here, it really kind of creates this funkiness here. All of that said, I was like really in my analytical kind of perfectionist brain with this piece as it was coming together. But, and including, I will say also including the sleeves, like I made the sleeves probably what I thought at the time was too long. But I wanted to get this third round in, and then you can see here, I did use a different skein of yarn. Here, can I get it to show? I used a Kelborn Woolen DK in a fairly similar green, just to kind of get me all the way through, because I did think that in some cases the texture was more important than the color because I was holding it with a mohair. Sorry, I realized that this episode just like went straight to the deep end. So if you haven't heard about this piece before, maybe go to the previous episode because there were some like places along the way. But yeah, what can I say? It's a knitting podcast where we dive deep into our projects. So it basically, during the making of this, I really was getting kind of frustrated that it wasn't exactly what I was thinking. You can see here, I actually increased when I picked up for the collar. The collar is also a bit thicker because it was when I was using the thicker version of the yarn, and I was really concerned about it with the fold over, that it was going to be too thick, blah, 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 blah. I picked up lower and knit a little bit farther up here and then started my collar because I thought maybe there wasn't enough space between this first stripe and then where the collar was supposed to start. All of this was kind of in, again, my like hyper analytical, quasi-perfectionist maker mind, where things weren't kind of lining up with exactly what I thought they were going to be. And now, on the other side of this, it has become a complete go-to. It is super easy to wear because I think one reason is that it pairs so well with jeans, which is how I spend a lot of my life. The collar, which kind of had made me nervous, I think now looks quite nice, and it stands up just a little bit, but I think that it makes my neck look kind of long and elegant, so I'll take it. It also looks really great with proper collars folded over it. So I've worn this to work a few times with a white shirt collar out, and then I also have a really kind of bright floral shirt that I've worn with the collar over it, and it looks really good and it kind of pops it a bit. So this has been super easy to style, super easy to wear. It's long enough that I feel totally comfortable wearing it even with leggings to run out to the shops. It's just turned into something that I really didn't think it would in terms of where it fits in my wardrobe. And again, the color makes it just really kind of a brightish statement piece without being outlandish or again, like hard to wear, hard to style. So this was really a bit of a journey, and I think it just goes to show that the kind of self-analysis, and I say this because I also just did this recently with a whip that you'll see in a bit, the self-analysis and kind of like questioning of a project when we're in it sometimes doesn't have a lot to do with how that project ends up living and working in the world. So this is my first FO, and I love it. I really like how large and oversized it is now. I kind of get the whole PetitKnit vibe from it for sure in terms of the oversized energy. It's easy to wear, and again, in the end too, the fibers feel really good. So even though I kind of came across that fiber hiccup, I think it's a real all's well that ends well tale. So really delighted with this one. I have another FO, actually, another sweater project FO, and this is the second time I've made this pattern. It is the Papoose Pullover by Midori Hirose, and it is a really fun construction. Definitely one where you have to kind of turn off your brain a bit and just follow the instructions. The work happens all the way across the arm. So you're starting out already having your sleeves done, which is quite fun. So then when you get to the body, it goes really, really fast. Though I will say the body for me of this piece was super, super enjoyable because it was all about playing with this fade and this gradient. So I started out also with fewer strands. I started out with just 2 strands of mohair at the top, and then I faded in a third, and then by the bottom I wanted to get this super, super dense both fabric and color. So the very bottom is a bit thicker, and it actually at one point has 4 strands before it goes back down to 3, so that I was able to get the kind of marling that I wanted and the soft gradient. And this piece is a gift knit for a friend and an artist who I was wearing my version of this at her home last summer in Germany, and she was into it at the time, and then I wore another hand knit at the opening that we had for her at our gallery this fall. And so, you know, there's certain folks that I really think she'll get it. She'll get the hand knit for sure, and I'm really happy that I was able to do this. I knit this out of many different balls of blue-green yarn, as you can see. It's all mohair silk, There are different proportions. For example, I start off with and actually used all the way, I think all the way through till this section here. I use Farmer's Daughter Fibers Mohair Silk, which is a really, really sumptuous, beautiful blend. The colorway is Glacial Lake, and it gave such dimension to this and was really, really fun to use because it has quite a bit of speckling in it, even at the very top. And then I held that with some La Bien-Aimée silk mohair, which is a different proportion of silk, and some Purl Soho. Their silk mohair is called, I forget, Treen, something like that. It's beautiful, and it actually has a higher silk content. So there's really like quite a bit of shine in those sections, and it feels definitely thinner too, and I think that was really good. I also had a bit of leftover lichen and lace, which had this is where that blue-green comes in with lots and lots of speckling, and it definitely tends a bit purple there too, which I quite like. And even though it's not a perfect fade, I mean, there's definitely lines that you can see. I think it works really nicely, and particularly not in the viewfinder. I think there's less of a line for each section, and I hope she gets a ton of wear out of it. So I'll be sending this off across the Atlantic this week, and hopefully it'll be a nice burst of California spring and sunshine. And ocean, a lot of folks, I posted about this piece on Instagram, and it does feel like an ocean wave, and that was definitely in my thoughts for sure. I'm getting ready to go down to Southern California at the end of the month, and that's always a time where I kind of go back to my ocean girl roots. Yeah, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast, but I used to be a beach lifeguard and spent a lot of time at the beach as part of my job for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, from when I was 16 every single summer through graduate school. Actually, it was a great job. Anyway, off to Whipland. And Whipland is quite fun these days. But it's all about the color work, and it's all about color changing yarn. So this is my Easy V, and I love it, and it's so freaking cute. This is all the color work is using scrap yarn and a little bit of SpinCycle. So I was looking at a lot of the versions of the Easy Bee, which is by Caitlin Hunter. It's also my first, is that true? No, I was gonna say it's my first V-neck, but that's not entirely true, because the My Time sweater by Lily Kate Makes has a quite deep split. But it has a kind of collar on it. It's different. It's a different kind of V-neck, and I really enjoyed this from cast on. I really like the deep ribbing. I've tried it on a number of times, and I think it's gonna look really great, even better when blocked. So I did cast on a few less stitches than my size. I'm knitting a size 2 or 3. I can double check. I'll put it down below. And in fact, sorry, I meant to say this at the beginning. All of the show notes, so all of the dyers and the designers and random factoids I think up along the way, will be included in the show notes down below. They are in what's called the description box, which weirdly, I was one of those people who could like never find the description box on YouTube. You hit this little button that says more, and then it drops down. Anyway, that's where all the details will be. And So yes, the Easy V, and I'll put my size for sure, but I'm pretty sure I'm making a size 3. It is so much fun to do this color work. It was super, super easy and straightforward. As I was looking at different versions on Instagram and Ravelry though, I realized I didn't want a total SpinCycle gradation. So instead, what I did is I used my SpinCycle and then alternated it with scraps of Wandering Flock DK. So it goes SpinCycle, Wandering Flock, SpinCycle, Wandering Flock, SpinCycle. And what that allowed me to do, which was really cool, was pick the solid color that would fade into or lead off of the fade from the SpinCycle. So this SpinCycle goes from like a light pink through a little bit of a light blue and then to a dark blue, and then I got to pick up the dark blue. And then this starts with a teal and goes to a gray and then goes to an orange and a pink, and then I picked up with the pink, and then so on and so forth. So it really was a super fun way to play with color. It felt like, because also the gauge is pretty large on this, it was easy to like kind of feel a little fast and loose with. I didn't get super precious about it. And I say that because another piece that we're gonna talk about, maybe for like a long time, I'm really in my head about picking the colors and kind of getting things kind of just right, and kind of I'm fixated on that. But I was not fixated at all for this piece. I just went with it. I'm really happy with the result. I extended the ribbing on the bottom quite a bit just because I thought it would be fun to have it match more with the length of the ribbing on the top, and it looks really cute on as well. So this is going to be a little bit longer. My main color for this is Sprite, and my tension does not look perfect in it at all. I knit a lot of the body of this on the Bart train, but I did do a swatch of this and it blocked out like real nice. So I'm not overly concerned about that. Yeah, but you can see there's like certain rows are just, the stitches look much bigger than others. If you can see that. Yeah, it's kind of funky. But that's what happens, I think, when you're knitting on mass transit. You know, you're just in a very different place from day to day when you pick up and put down your knitting like that. In any case, Sprite, the colorway is, hold collar, one moment. Forget Me Not. Yes, Forget Me Not. And this is what it looks like in the skein. It's really, really fun to knit with. It's calling itself a sport. I think it's knitting like a DK for sure. And it's really feels quite plump and round. And so it worked really well as a contrast with this bottom row of color work. And I'm quite pleased with it. I would definitely buy more of this yarn. I really like it a lot. So that's my Easy V. All I have to do left are the sleeves, which I will also probably do on mass transit. Yeah, and I'm debating, oh, I didn't mention, I held a mohair with a pink mohair with all the SpinCycle when I did that. I don't know where it is, but it's like a super neutral, light, almost beige pink. So you can see there's a little fun fuzz. And it was like a random mohair from my stash. And you can see how light it is in this section. Maybe, yeah. You see there's like a little shine and a little lightness to it. In any case, I'm debating doing the color work on the sleeves, just because I feel like I'll wear it more if it's just plain. And this is just such a statement on top that, I don't know, I'm feeling like if I did a really nice long 1x1 rib cuff, that would pair really nicely. And quite frankly too, the color work makes this really dense and heavy, and I'm not sure I'm gonna love that on my sleeves, and I think I'll probably wear it more without. So those are my thoughts on my Easy V. Feel free to give any feedback in the comments below. I do love our comment section, by the way. Last episode especially, I feel like we had some nice little back and forths and discussions, and yeah, I really, really appreciate it. So please do comment and offer any kind of feedback and thoughts, what have yous. Next up, I have a very potentially irresponsible cast on. So I don't know how the rest of y'all do it, but I started out this year with kind of a list of things I wanted to make, and most of them were things that I either already had yarn for or I had a plan to purchase yarn in person for. We'll get into my whole no online yarn buying situation after this. But yeah, I had like a plan and I was executing my plan pretty straightforwardly, like ticking off boxes. You know, I wanted to do this EZV, I cast it on, I'm like cooking with gas, everything's going great. And then I've been, as many of you know, like, sorry, fluff moment. I've been working towards this like large scale, I'll call it cast on, which is the Twigs sweater by Junko Akamoto, and I've been planning to make this for a really long time. I got some partners in crime to kind of walk along with me through this process. Thank you so much to Aimee and to Carmen and Jackie. Aimee Palco of the Meaningful Stitch podcast and Carmen and Jackie from Knitting a Good Yarn podcast. I think are planning to join at some point this year, potentially, in making one as well. And we've been kind of going back and forth in a group chat about what yarn we're thinking of for this project. And anyway, I've been really in my head about that whole situation. That's kind of a sidebar to my next whip though. So I have this running list, and there are some projects that I've discussed on the podcast, which were just dream knitting, which kind of never came to pass. And I think in one of my very first episodes from this time, maybe last year or last summer, I kind of had the proposal of, or was planning to make, the Misurina t-shirt. It was going to be my first t-shirt because I still haven't made a t-shirt by, I think that's also by Caitlin Hunter, but I'll double check that and it'll be in the show notes below. Anyway, I was planning to make the Misurina. I really love the pattern. It's this cool yoked tee, and I got the yarn to make it. I got some SpinCycle that started off with like a pink and then transitions through greens. The palette's called Miss Me, and I was like, this is perfect. It's gonna be like, and you only need one skein of it. It's like, it's gonna look like a perfect kind of flower. I had this whole plan. I was gonna use though a really, really lightweight silk from, I think it's pure silk, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it's from Magpie Fibers. I had the whole thing planned. I got the yarn. I talked about it on the podcast. Never cast this on. Never cast it on. It just didn't happen. And that was okay. This is like part of the process, right? And then here I am minding my own business on Friday night, like a good knitter, staying in and knitting on a hot Friday night after I put my kids to bed. And I flip over to ye old Grocery Girls podcast. And lo and behold, they pull out a stunning Misurina, and using a really cool SpinCycle colorway that, what was it called again? It's the Farmer's Daughter Fibers custom color. And they paired it with a really beautiful kind of maybe variegated blue. I can't remember. Anyway, I was like, yes, that was the plan. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous and it's so beautiful, and oh, I have to do it. I'm just gonna do it right now. So I did. And on Friday night, I cast it on. I realized I wanted to not use the pink, the light pink, kind of almost, it's like a very shiny pinky silk. I was like, I'm not loving that. So I went for this La Bien-Aimée sport yarn. It's a super wash yarn, and I'll get it for you in one moment. It's a really cool gray, oh, it's looking very purple there. Sorry, here it is. But it's really more of a blue gray, little hints of green. Sorry, I am trying to look more into the camera. I did get a comment about that, and my apologies, folks, if I'm too distracted by kind of performing to a screen. I do like having the screen up though, because then I can see what you're all seeing, and it really helps, especially with those close-ups, to know whether or not I'm in frame. In any case, so I had that. I had my Miss Me, which as you can see is already down to my greens transitioning into browns, which will be perfect for like the bottom, for like the earth when it gets to it. And I just went, I just went for it, and I just like, I mean, this is basically all I've done. I'm filming this on Monday, so isn't that great? It's really cool. And I got into a bit of a moment because I realized once I'd finished the lace and done like my first round of color work, I've never knit lace, y'all, ever. I've never knit proper lace, anything. I mean, okay, that's not actually true. I did do a lace scarf once for my mom when I was in college. So like many, many years ago. And I was really worried. It's still, I am still like not completely convinced that this isn't just a big old mess. I mean, you can kind of see that there are shapes in there, right? I don't know. I did try to steam block it, and then when I kept working on it, it like scrunched back up, but I'm not a tight knitter. So I'm really, really hopeful that this, when I wet block it, I did do a poll on Instagram because I really got into my feelings about this. And I was like, what should I do? Should I tear it all out and just, I was thinking, I mean, here's my short rows. I mean, that looks beautiful. I was like, maybe it's just gonna be straight increases and cables, because the cables are really fun and they're easy. They're just simple little 2x2 cables. So I could just do cables at the top and then circular yoke type increases. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking myself into this again, because the poll results and my own intuition was overwhelmingly, wait, do a full wet block, blocking is magic, and lace is actually pretty cool. But I am really happy with this. It's been so satisfying to make. I love the cables. I love my little pink flowers. And now I'm getting to do, here, oh, there we go. Now I'm getting to do the little green stems. And I say little, but they do get quite big. I think it's gonna be really fun. And it's gonna be my first t-shirt. So I'm really excited to have a summer knit. I, like many of you, am long awaiting Rebecca Clow's Tolsta tee, which I'm really, really looking forward to, because I do have some yarn that I'd be excited to try that on, and I think I could do with some knit tees. Sorry, I was about to start knitting on this because it's seriously so pleasing and pleasurable, and the way that the yarn color changes are working are so great. And what's been really fun about it is also, besides my little moment of anxious self-doubt, which, I mean, isn't that what it's all about? Oh, doesn't that look cool? Besides that, it's just gone so quick, and I didn't think I'd have to reconsider or doubt my colors at all. That was really instinctual and easy and a great go-to. And once I get through this color work, which again is flying by, I mean, I'm nearly done. I think it'll be really, really fun. I'm not sure I'm gonna do the texture on the body, but it's knitting up at this loose but and airy gauge, but it's really, I think, a beautiful fabric. So yeah, that's been really fun. So thank you so much to my grocery girls for the inspo. Really appreciate it. And I guess now I have to talk about my main plan. Kind of, I've really psyched myself out, guys. So the idea was for this Twigs project that I was giving myself kind of a cop-out to my no buying yarn online vibe. Okay, so this is my birthday cast on. I'm about to turn 40 in literally 4 days. So I'm getting excited about that, and I really wanted to cast on this project as kind of a project to do in my 40th year. I've been, you know, knitting pretty consistently and at a level where I feel like I'm ready to do this type of color work. I've been playing with my gauge in different ways, and I feel like I can achieve this kind of tough to achieve gauge. Like, I really thought this was gonna be a great idea. And I knew that I wanted a really specific kind of color energy and color vibe. I thought, and if you watch my last episode, you'll see at one point I got cut off at the end, which I didn't realize how early it cut off, even in editing, which I apologize for, but I did start to discuss in the portion which no one saw because it was cut off, my acquisitions for this project. So when I was in Portland for the Rose City Yarn Crawl, I got some SpinCycle dyed in the wool in the colorways, excuse me. This is Every Rose, which is greens and pinks and reds. And this is, it's called an ish colorway because it has a little bit, I think maybe this one has more yellow, or it's not exactly what the planned colorway was. And then I had ordered some of this really, really wonderful color. This is Sunday Morning. I think I showed this. This is the Sunday Morning custom colorway for the Sonder Yarn Co. And I love this colorway. I'm really, really excited for it. I think the combination of this and this, right? They're like cousins. I feel like this is kind of the more pastel version, and then this is the bolder version. And I think they'll be really great for the two contrast colors that you're supposed to have in Twigs. So I've had these, I'm stoked on these, raring to go. The issue was the main color. So I had this exception to my no online yarn buying. I did look diligently in person in Portland. My ideal color was a really rich, more green than blue, solid color. So I knew I didn't want any sort of tonal even. I wanted it to be like fully saturated and just be kind of a canvas to watch these SpinCycle color changing yarns play. So I've been watching and loving the colors that come out of the Lamb and Kid dye house, and I really, really loved this color Spruce. And so the issue though is finding the right base, right, and the right fiber that will pair with the SpinCycle and get me gauge. Because Twigs is, and this is like a long project intro, so if this is like not something you're interested person. I totally get it. But I think it's kind of fun to really get into the literal nitty-gritty with some of these because this is a long-term project. I know it's going to take me a while. I want it to be really kind of an heirloom type project. I want it to be something that I can wear and that others can wear. So it's 30 stitches and 32 rows for 4 inches, which is, you know, a really substantially small gauge. The recommended yarns are technically sport weight yarns, and then they're knit on quite small needles, 0s, 1s, and 2s, depending on the section. So I knew that I was going for this really kind of tight, thick knit that would make the contrast color really punch out. I was able to get gauge, and for me that was, it's not just the needle size that I'm looking for, but I also need to actually actively knit more tightly because in general I'm a loose knitter. And I was able to get gauge with this super, super beautiful Elmer fingering. This is 400 yards for 100 grams. And it's from the Lamb & Kid, and this is that spruce color that I was discussing. It looks much darker here. There we go. Some better lighting. It's a deep green with a lot of cool blue tones in it, and it's simply stunning. So I cast on after I swatched, and I started to do my color work, and this fiber absolutely swallowed up the SpinCycle. I mean, it was genuinely shocking. It was like it engulfed it, and it was really frustrating. I'm gonna be super honest, it was very frustrating. I tried like knitting in different styles, English versus continental. I tried holding my yarn in different hands to try to make, you know, a more dominant for the contrast color, but it seemed like no matter what I did, this yarn just was swallowing up the SpinCycle. And I'm wondering if part of it is because this particular version, so I'm talking now about the dyed in the wool custom colorway from the Sonder Yarn Co. I think that this is genuinely thinner than the dyed in the wool from my other project, from the Misurina. And I kind of sculpted around online, and I think there's like a little bit, there's some folks who are curious if that's the case, if the yarn is getting thinner from SpinCycle in this particular brand. It's giving me flashbacks of this project, to be honest. And it's like also kind of weird because I feel like it's messing with my head. In any case, it just wasn't gonna work. It wasn't the right contrast color yarn. So I still really love this yarn. Here's my little mini, I ripped it back to save the SpinCycle, but I kept the collar and the short rows on because it's, first of all, it just is so, it looks so good. I know this doesn't mean anything because it's just like a tiny little almost swatch at this point, but it's a really nice, it's knitting up really nicely. I really like the fabric. So I kept this just in case. I'm not sure what will come next with this. And then I went out into the internets to try to find a different yarn. I tried to get gauge with something that I had on hand, and that was not, that was silly. That didn't work at all. And so I have 2 more options, and this is what I'm going to be doing this week, is swatching with the Magpie Fibers Nest Sport. I don't love the color as much. I mean, I love the color. It's really beautiful, and I got it because I'll definitely use it if I don't use it for this project. It's a steel gray. And I think it goes really, really beautifully with these colors. So I'm not worried about that. But I really had it in my ideal mind that I was gonna get like a moody green that would then contrast with the greens in this and this. So it had to be a deep green. And then I found this and I was like, this is the perfect color. Like this is the color. But it just arrived today actually. And I'm quite concerned that I'm gonna have the same issues with it really swallowing up the SpinCycle as well. It is a single. It's from Lavendola. It's an Italian yarn company. Oh yeah, Lavendel. Sorry, I have not necessarily dyslexia, but I started reading really, really, really young, like probably too young. And so I have this thing where like words, I can sound words out in my head, but I can't say them sometimes if they're new to me, which is one of the reasons why when I studied a foreign language, I did Spanish, because everything, you sound out every letter. It's like really, really consistent. And it's also why I'm terrible at French. I can read French pretty well, but like it's super, super embarrassing to see me speak French. And I really struggle to say out loud words that I have not heard spoken before. So this is the name of the yarn brand, and my apologies for mispronunciations. And I love this color. It is the color that I wanted for sure. It is a green, but it has kind of steely tones to it. I love it. But when it arrived, I was just like, this just might, it might dominate in the same way that the Elmer did. And Elmer is technically a fingering, and this is technically a sport. The colorway is Pinot, and I could only find this colorway in the sport weight. But I don't know. I'm struggling with that like over analytical, I think, perfectionist vibe again, because I haven't even swatched with it and I'm already, you know, problem solving. So I don't know. Anyway, this is like turning into quite a journey with this piece, but I really don't want to get it wrong. So the other option that I have is letting go of doing the contrast colors in SpinCycle and just using this beautiful Elmer fingering as my main color. I'm already, you know, through the short rows with it, and I'm sure that I can, you know, find a contrast color that will, you know, stand up to the fluff on this. I really do think it's the cashmere and kind of the halo of the cashmere, which is again like super, super beautiful. No one's complaining about this yarn, but it was just not a good fit for the color work. And this is a case too where I did knit my swatch flat and then undid it. And I think that if I hadn't done that, if I had knitted in the round, I would have been able to see that more easily. But now I have a collar. So yes, this is where I am with this project. I'm feeling a little bit frustrated, but also kind of not excited, but like ready to work through it, I guess. But it's not feeling the kind of easy breezy, you know, beautiful flower t-shirt vibes that I have with this project, where I just kind of was like, oh, cool idea, grocery girls. I also have this yarn. I also want to make this. Great. Instead, this is literally a project I've been planning to make for years, and I'm like completely overwhelmed and overthinking, and yeah, so I mean, it's like not a huge problem. But I feel like I'm still kind of in it. So if you have any feedback or suggestions, be really, really delighted to hear them. And because I really want to cast this on Friday. So I'm keen to figure it out. And I do have some yarn that I think would look really nice as a contrast to this spruce colorway. I think it would probably be like I could honestly knit on this tight of needle. I could use some of the Cori worsted I have. That could look really beautiful. Like that beautiful gray, and then like a, I don't know, kind of a pinky brown that I have, another magpie nest. So that's definitely possible. But I love this. I love this. It's a pure and simple wool. It does look pure and simple, and it looks like it would look really, really beautiful in Colorwork too. And it feels awesome. So who knows? Maybe there's another project waiting in the wings. Speaking of waiting in the wings, I do have 2 other longer term whips that I have not gone back to. My drawing sweater, which is the piece with all the flowers on it, that I have not gone back to. I have another PetitKnit, just plain kind of stockinette sweater that I also am just kind of letting sit for a bit as I work through these ideas. But I do want to have something that I can just kind of have as not a mindless knit, but a really more straightforward one. So as soon as I'm done with my sleeves and this t-shirt, my plan is to have Twigs going and then have kind of a parallel projects that are more straightforward and easier to kind of get through. So that's where I am. I am really quite pleased with these acquisitions. I think I made the most of my buying online with them. I think they'll be very happy in my stash, and we'll figure out fun things to do with them if they don't go into the Twigs. And I guess that's about it. In terms of life stuff, like I said, I have my 40th coming up this week. I have some really lovely pals coming to celebrate with me, so that'll be really fun. And we're gonna have tacos and drink some wine, and yeah, I think it's gonna be a nice start to the next decade. My work is going really well, the gallery's doing great, and I also got some really wonderful feedback on my podcast episode that I did recently. If you haven't listened to that, I'll link it down below as well. I had so much fun talking to Anastasia of the Make One Right marketing group, and we chatted about the intersections between fine art and the craft arts, and particular knitting and fiber arts, and it was a really, really fun discussion. So if you have 45 minutes and you're commuting, or you just like to listen to some nerdy podcasts, I really, really recommend it. She also mentions a really interesting speaker who I hadn't heard of before, and named Simon Sinek, and I think a lot of folks have heard of him. He's kind of an inspirational TED Talk type person, and in any case, it took me down this kind of rabbit hole of thinking about how we position kind of what we do and why we do it, and that's been really inspiring me over the last few weeks. I've also been working on doing some writing for work that's been really satisfying, talking a lot about art and ideas to lots of different kinds of audiences, and that's been great. What else? Oh, as I mentioned, I'm getting ready for a trip down to Southern California at the end of the month to see family and go swim in a little bit warmer of an ocean than up here in the Bay. But that's about it. It's been a really fun and productive last month, and I'm really excited to show you what I get up to in May, closer to the end of the month. In fact, maybe I'll try to film in Ojai when I'm down there, which is where my parents live and where I grew up. It's a small town, but it's really sweet. So maybe I'll try to grab some footage from that and show you around. Oh, speaking of another trip I went on, I realized was down to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which was so much fun. And we spent a few days in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Unfortunately, I had big plans to go to Acer Santa Fe, but they were closed the 2 days that I was there. I think the owners were out of town at a conference. So just gives me one more reason to go back. And I have to say, I just love having knitting stores now being part of my itinerary and how I think of my travels. It really is a really fun way of experiencing different places around the world. And with that, I will say thank you all for joining me and for supporting me and putting myself out there. I really love doing this. It's been really rewarding for me, and I can't believe this is the 16th episode, and I just want to say thank you again for supporting me putting myself out into the world, and I would like to encourage you to do the same thing, because you being yourself allows other people the permission to be themselves, and the more that we see each other as we are, I think the more it encourages personal creativity and personal freedom and all the things that we love doing in the world. So thank you. I am hoping to be back here very soon with some new, with an actual Twigs cast on and my colors all picked out. Thanks for the support, thanks for the emotional support, and I'll see you all very soon. Cheers, bye.